Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So this morning I was watching Cynthia G's video about Martin Luther King. And in that video, she was talking about how Martin Luther King came to realize that his dream had turned into a nightmare. And she showed segments of his interview that he did in 1968. She also cited the Advise Show and thanked the Advise Show for showing segments of that interview. Now, for those of you who have not seen the entire footage of King's interview that he did in 1968, where he talked about his dream turning into a nightmare, I will include a link in the description box to the full interview so you can watch it for yourself, judge it for yourself, and analyze it for yourself. Because often what happens is people have a particular agenda. And what they do is they'll slice and dice things and use it to further their particular ideology or their agenda. And that's what happened when Cynthia G interpreted that video. She basically used it to imply that Dr. King regretted supporting integration. She used it to support her arguments in favor of black separatism. And if you watch that interview, you will know that King never supported black separatism. He never supported this notion that black people need to be separate from America. So I encourage you all to watch that interview for yourself and judge it for yourself. When King referred to his dream becoming a nightmare, he was talking about how the war in Vietnam derailed the civil rights movement and it made it difficult to fund social programs because a lot of the funds were going to support that war in Vietnam. That's what he was talking about. He also talked about how the attention was taken away from the civil rights movement because of the war in Vietnam. And throughout his interview, he was actually talking about the need for black people to have full citizenship rights, to be treated as men and women, as human beings in this society. That was his focus. He talked about how in the initial stages, they dealt with the issue of human dignity. But then he also talked about how there was a need to deal with deeper questions of equality, like housing issues, education issues, economic issues, poverty, and war, and all that stuff. That's what King was talking about. So I encourage you all to watch the video for yourself and judge it for yourself. I mean, in that same video that, Cynthia G is trying to spin to support some argument for black separatism, King was talking about the beauty of integration in the sense of black people maintaining their cultural identity as African Americans, still having their own distinct culture and, the beauty of integration being diversity. So he talks about that in the interview. So I encourage you all to watch that full interview for yourself and judge it for yourself instead of allowing people to distort King's words. I mean, this is no different from like these right-wing conservatives who tried to distort King in order to support their own agenda that's contrary to the interests of black people. For instance, you have people distorting King's message in order to oppose programs like affirmative action. And here you have this woman and others like her, using King's words to support black separatism, to make it seem as if King supported black separatism when he never did. And, people have this misperception that somehow people like King and the civil rights workers were fighting for acceptance and love from white people, or fighting to be a part of white society. They weren't fighting for that. They were fighting for human dignity. They were fighting for equality. They were fighting for full citizenship rights. That's what they were fighting for. So people have it all the way messed up. And for people that want to know my position on black separatism, I will encourage you to watch my video on how black separatism is a fantasy. In that video, I present sound arguments, just voicing my opposition to this utopian talk of black separatism. And to date, nobody has challenged any of the points that I raised in that video. I mean, some people were so intimidated, they said, well, I can't even watch that video. But anyway, I just wanted to share my thoughts about King, to reflect on his life. And I encourage you all, again, to watch that full interview, not just for purposes of clarifying these people misunderstanding and, misinterpreting and distorting King's words, but for the purposes of just hearing what this brother had to say. Just for the purposes of realizing how relevant what he talked about in 1968 is to what is happening today in our country, in this country. So again, watch that interview. Link is in the description box. Tell me what you think after you had a chance to watch the full interview. I encourage everyone to watch that full interview before you comment to this video. And also, I want to let you all know I'm about to respond to your comments to the video that I did about young Pharaoh, Martin Luther King, and the civil rights movement. Peace.